Welcome to today's session. Today we'll be discussing on engineering, nuclear testing and weapons. In the last discussion, we have discussed about the role of weapons and how the computer technology has made this become more important with related to weapons when it talks of firing them automatically, then who takes the onus on in case of wrong firing and other related responsibilities with respect to it. In today's session, we are going to give a greater coverage on nuclear testing, weapons and the role of engineers in relation to that. So, today's module is going to cover in nuclear ethics, importance of nuclear ethics, role of engineers in it, special code of ethics for organizations as well as people working in nuclear agencies, general and specific duties of nuclear engineers, formation of ethical policies. Is it ethical for engineers to develop nuclear weapons? Again, we will try to see it from various ethical perspective like view of utilitarianism on nuclear weapons, theory of deontology on nuclear weapons from the view of nuclear deterrence, and so we will discuss each one separately with emphasis on the role of engineers in it and the ethical issues with respect to it. So, like we understand today, all the countries of the world are aspiring to be nuclear states today. This is for the sake of their own freedom as well as security and freedom from this is for their security as well as freedom from dependence from other countries like US's maybe. So, the need for the country and their aspiration to emerge as nuclear states has led to a newer branch of ethics which we call as nuclear ethics. Again, before we start discussing in details on this issue, we must try to understand this is again like we discussed about computer technology and the related responsibilities, understanding one's own duties towards the others, because it gives so much of power. So, that power can be used in a positive sense or it can be used in a negative sense also. So, it depends a lot on the values and virtues of the people, maybe the culture of the nation, the values of the nation, and a lot of self discipline and self competence to see how we are using this immense power that the nuclear weapons may be giving to us. So, in this context, we will see the whole discussion and maybe try to analyze it. So, nuclear ethics is an emerging branch of ethics which talks of nuclear warfare, nuclear deterrence, nuclear arms control, nuclear disarmament or nuclear energy from the lens of ethical theories or moral conduct. We will see each of these terminologies separately and try to understand what they mean. Nuclear warfare. It is a type of conflict, form of conflict which is leading to mass destruction, in which nuclear weapons are used by the country to inflict damage on the enemy. So, nuclear weapon, why it is used is nuclear weapons as weapons of mass destruction can cause much extensive damage in a very short period of time, and could have a long lasting effect as a warfare result. So, destructions caused within a short time, but having a long lasting radiological effect. So, that's why it is a very it's strong as a weapon and as a weapon of mass destruction. So, it is a strategy to use to prevent war. So, that is called nuclear deterrence. So, when you talk of nuclear deterrence, it is a strategy to prevent war. It follows the rationale of the first user principle, which states that the right of the country to use nuclear weapons for self-defense in situation of an armed attack for protecting its security. So, it is like when you're talking of nuclear deterrence, it is the possibility of thwarting an enemy's plans with nuclear weapons. So, it is a strategy to prevent war. Nuclear disarmament is an act of reducing or eliminating nuclear weapons. It is an objective to create a world which is free of nuclear weapons, in which nuclear weapons are not used by any of the states. So, it can also be described as denuclearization, which denotes that the process is of complete nuclear disarmament. But what we may try to see, like it requires, like what we may try to see over here, that it requires maybe both the countries who are like deciding for this nuclear disarmament to be equally powerful and agreeing to that. And otherwise, one may decide for nuclear disarmament, but the other, if it does not decide for it, so it may lead to an inequality of power. So, when nuclear disarmament is decided, it needs to be in the form of like consensus by the countries who decide for it. Arms control refers to treaties made between potential adversaries that reduce the likelihood and scope of war, usually imposing limitation on military capability. So, although disarmament always involves the reduction of military forces or weapons, arms control does not. So, it is again a treaty which is made between potential adversaries. Like when you're talking of disarmament, it's like complete disarmament. We are not going to use any nuclear weapons. But when you're trying to talk of control, it is of limited use. It's not total not use, but it's a limited use. But for that also some agreement is required between the potential adversaries. When you talk of nuclear arm control, it is a term that is used to describe the international restrictions relating to the development, production, stocking, proliferation and usage of small arms, conventional weapons and weapons of mass destruction. So, then what is the difference between nuclear arms control and nuclear disarmament? The difference is, like when you're talking of disarmament, it is totally like banning, and it is like you are not going to use it any form again. But when you are talking of like nuclear arms control, it talks of the international restrictions on the development, production, stocking, proliferation and usage. So, it has like it relates to all the 4 or 5 stages, and it relates to small arms, conventional weapons and weapons of mass destruction. When we talk of disarmament, it is complete, like we go for like there will be no nuclear weapon. So, based on that, we are going to discuss about the importance of nuclear ethics. Why it is important for having a nuclear ethics is consequences of nuclear accidents can be monumental. Emissions from nuclear reactors can cause huge harm to the life around them. Tragic incidents can occur if unethical choices are made by engineers, like selecting a wrong site for testing of the nuclear weapons. Reactor meltdowns, which have been identified amongst the serious nuclear accidents, usually occurs when proper security measures are not taken. This is where again it highlights the role of the engineers, because if you remember, the primary focus of the role of engineers is the safety and security of the health and property of the country of the people of the country at large. So when it talks of accidents and the great consequences related to it and the harm provided to the life around through emissions from nuclear reactors, then taking a unethical choice of doing the testing in a wrong site, the reactor meltdowns, these have been leading to serious accidents which have been claiming lives, and not only of a single generation, maybe across generations also. So it becomes more important about the role of the engineers in being careful in this while handling these things, or designing for these things, or testing for these things, so that the safety and security of the people at large are not compromised. So it is why it is important to avoid accidents like meltdowns, as these can cause death and injury to the surrounding community through explosions and leakage of radioactive material. Disposition of nuclear waste is another major issue. Nuclear waste can again be deadly to both human and animal life as well as the environment. So how you are disposing it of, because the waste can be hazardous to both animal and human as well as the environment. So we can understand, because it involves huge money and resources, so resources are involved, so it becomes an ethical responsibility of the engineers also to make sure that the resources are not wasted. So because of these things, because we understand primarily the focus is on the safety and security issues, it takes into consideration the safety and health issues of not only the animals, not only the human, but also its effect on negative consequences on the environment at large. So there becomes the role of the engineers more important, because they are the people who are thinking about it, who are designing about it, who are testing, and also who are implementing it to see its implication. So the role of engineers becomes very important in this. So let us see how the role of engineers are important. So they are important because they are not only as we discussed, it's playing a major role in designing, but also in testing, so that no harm reaches the mankind. So International Atomic Energy Agency have a special code of behavior for the people working in as well as for nuclear facility operating organizations. So, now we are going to discuss code of ethics specifically for people working in nuclear agencies. Adopt a conservative, risk-based approach to decision making. So, adopt a conservative, risk-based approach to decision making. Why this is required? Why we need to have a conservative, risk-based approach? It is like, because if we are committing an error and if you are taking a wrong decision, if you are casual in a decision making, if you are reaching a decision without doing much of testing, ignoring some of the negative maybe results that's been showing, and we are hurried up to see the consequences, then what happens? Any wrong action, any error which goes unnoticed, which is maybe either by commission or by omission, can be disastrous to the not only to mankind but to the nature, to the animal world as such. So, to prevent that thing from happening, so people must adopt a conservative, risk-based approach to decision making, where they have to calculate the risks involved in every step, every action that they are doing. So, safety needs to be placed before any commercial gain. People have to own their own responsibility, they have to take ownership of their own their own safety and their safety of others. Then the safety and environmental considerations need to be integrated into business practices. We cannot do any business without taking the safety and environmental considerations. It needs to be ensured that there is an effective mechanism for communication between the board and the operational level managers, in order that the board level decision making is done with appropriate consideration of the safety and environmental risk. Sometimes what happens, those who are operating in the field or in the shop floor, they get to know very intricacies of the problem, very nitty-gritty of the issues, which needs to be conveyed to people who are taking the maybe strategic decisions at the board level. So, there needs to be a lot of communication between the board and the operation level managers, so that board level decision making is done taking into consideration the safety and environmental risk of the operation level managers. So, another important fact is communicate openly and honestly with regulators, employees and all other stakeholders. To maintain a blame-free reporting culture, which encourages a full reporting of unsafe or unethical practices, incidents and near misses, and that uses this information to continually improve the organization. It is not, you have not checked it, it is your fault, or you should have done it. So, this type of blaming should not be there. So, and this blame free environment would help in reporting the full unsafe or unethical practices, so that people can learn from those incidents, people can understand where they went wrong and go for self correction and improve their performance next time. So, openly share operating experience information with other industry operation organizations, including benchmarking, and make effective use of experiences of others while respecting commercial confidentiality. So, we should be open to learn from others, we should be open to learn from the best practices of other organization and try to find out where we are behind and try to improve on that issues. Participate objectively and honestly in local, national and global discussions and policy making processes regarding energy supply decisions. So, they need to participate in local, national and global discussions on policy making, and so that they can take a decision about energy supply decisions. As we understand, there is a lot of money transactions happening, and it involves a huge money for testing and maybe procuring, etc. There could be questions of bribery and corruption, and that's why it has been stated that bribery and corruption are not tolerated at any level or in any area of the organization. So, it is not tolerated at any level or in any area of the organization. So, it is a very strict this thing, so that the self interest does not come in clash with the organization's interest or the even the country's interest at large. Materials, technology and information regarding nuclear activities are not illegally sold or distributed or otherwise misused. Being a good neighbor to and supporter of the local community, including advising them to measures taken to protect their health and safety and the local environment. So, these are called these are the proactive measures. So, being a good neighbor to and supporter of the local community, so that, and again including advertising them, including advising them for measures to be taken to protect their health and safety and the local environment. So, these are some of the ways in which talks of nuclear ethics, and these are some of the ways which talks of the nuclear ethics and special requirements of agencies who are working with nuclear power, nuclear energy, and so the responsibility for the safety of the community, safety of the users, and also how to protect for the environment at large. Now, we will talk of some general duties of nuclear engineers, like designing or developing nuclear equipments like reactors, cores, radiation shielding and associated instrumentation, direct operating or maintenance activities of operational nuclear power plants to ensure they meet safety standards, write operational instructions to be used in nuclear plant operator or in handling and disposing of nuclear waste, monitor nuclear facility operations to identify any design, construction or operation practices that violate safety regulations and laws, perform experiment to test whether methods of using nuclear material, reclaiming nuclear fuel or disposing of nuclear waste are acceptable, take corrective actions or order plant shutdowns in emergencies, examine nuclear accidents and gather data that can be used to design preventive measures. So, what we find is some important points, what they need to do is to for responsible handling of responsible handling of nuclear weapons that we have, or the products that we are making, nuclear equipments, etc. So, so what are the general duties engineers have in terms of designing, operating, maintenance, for writing of the manual and constant monitoring, and then coming to like doing experimentation for testing and taking corrective actions after like maybe some wrong things have been reported, or like of it can also talk of like planned shutdowns in emergencies. See, what we see over here, what you can feel over here is the safety and security of the affected parties, the beneficiaries, and the environment at large. The long term effect on it are the major concerns which needs to be there in the mind of the people, and based on that they are going to take a decision about what should be their role at each of the important stages related to the nuclear equipments. So, we will talk of some specific duties of nuclear engineers with respect to nuclear weapon testing. Designing and testing weapons for building strong bases for ensuring the security of the country. Making sure that the complete secrecy is maintained and no information is leaked out which could hamper the security of the country. It is in a way like the rule of confidentiality. Implementing tests in such a way that it does not hamper the mankind as well as the animal life and the surroundings. This implies that several precautionary measures should be taken, like testing should be done in ranges which are quite far from densely or even medium populated areas. All loopholes while testing should be identified and properly recorded by the engineers such that these mistakes are not repeated, as can be very deadly for the mankind. Disposition of nuclear waste could be done in such a way that it leaves minimum negative impact on our environment. So, environment is a major concern over here, and we need to see like we are like disposal of the waste are done in such a way like it is not going to cause any harm to the environment at large. In the next session, we are going to continue with the formation of the ethical policies and how we are going to deal with the nuclear policies, what is the role of the different, how we can look into nuclear deterrence from utilitarianism perspective and rights and duties perspective, and evaluate the whole scenario based on some cases. Thank you.